We should celebrate them. It is so great to have the girls' hand chimes playing for our services today. So ladies, thank you so much for taking part in worship and helping lead worship today. Good morning and welcome to New Heights service at Pulaski Heights United Methodist Church. My name is Jacob Lynn. I'm one of the pastors here. And I wanted to stop and take a moment to pray, but I wanted to let you know that we're going to especially be praying for our worship leader, Ken Weatherford, for his family. His mom is in the hospital and they're having kind of a rough time. So he's there with them. So prayers for Ken's father, who had to help take care of Ken's mom, but we'll be especially lifting up Lisa Weatherford. So if you would, join me in prayer. Gracious God, we give you thanks for this day, for opportunities to come together and worship you. We especially lift up Lisa Weatherford to you, for you to fill her with your healing, to give her your comfort and peace, and to also be present with Ken Weatherford Sr. and as he has to come to cope with the experiences of this weekend. Give him comfort and let him find peace and understanding in you. Give him courage. Be with them all in this difficult time. Be with us as we seek to worship you, that we seek to know you more fully, that we may carry your message into this world. In Jesus' name, amen.
Good morning. I'm so glad to see all of you this morning. My name is Lynn Lindsay, and it's an honor for me to be with you today, where our mission here at Pulaski Heights United Methodist Church is to love God, love neighbor, and change the world. We have a few special announcements. You'll have many announcements in your Tower newsletter and also in your bulletin this morning, but I would like to remind you that on December the 6th, and you'll hear more about this later in the children's time, our church is ringing the bell all over Little Rock for the Salvation Army. Also want to remind you of the opportunity to help a child at Wakefield School, and there are details about that in your bulletin also. And then I think Jacob will be saying something more about this, but this is the time when we will be entering into our stewardship, we already are, campaign, and when we should prayerfully consider what we can do for the church. And now is it time for the call to worship, and I need to find my call to worship here, and hope all of you all will join in at the appropriate places. Come and worship everyone on earth, everywhere the sun shines. Let's praise God together. For listening when we call, answering our prayers, forgiving our mistakes, and providing what we need. Let's praise God together. Come and worship everywhere on earth, everywhere the sun shines. Let's praise God together.
Good morning. We're happy to have you here in worship with us today. As you're able, please stand to your feet and worship with us. Praises rising, eyes are turning to you. We turn to you. Hope is stirring, hearts are yearning for you. together with the peace of Christ.
I'd like to invite, as all the adults sit down, I'd like to invite the children to come join me here on the steps for our lesson for young Christian children's time. I'm glad to see all of you this morning. Do you know, girls and boys, when you are here with us today, it makes worship more special for me. It makes worship more special for all of the adults because we love to see you. And I guess you might wonder why in the world Reverend Lynn has on a red apron and also has a bell and also has a big red kettle back there. Well, I'm going to tell you about that in just a minute as soon as I tell you about one of my very favorite Bible verses. Jesus was with his disciples and he said, when you gave me something to drink, when I was thirsty, you gave me something to drink. When I was hungry, you gave me something to eat. And the disciples said, Jesus, when did we do that? Lord, we don't remember doing that. And you know what he said? He said, when you do it for anyone else, when you do it for someone who needs it, you're doing it for me. And that's why I have the Salvation Army kettle here today, because our church is going to ring a bell like this all over Little Rock on December the 6th. Everywhere you go, everywhere, Kroger's, Walmart, any store, they're going to be all over Little Rock. Those will be our church members. And we need lots of people to help, because the Salvation Army helps people who are hungry. They help people, they give people clothes who need them. And so we want to help the Salvation Army feed others, don't we? And we need 80 more teams of people. And so I want you to ask your mom and dad if you all could be one of those teams. Wouldn't that be great? And you'd get to ring the bell for 2 hours. That's a long time, isn't it? But I can guarantee you that people will put money in the kettle when they see your smiling faces. And then you will know in your hearts that you're helping others and that you're helping Jesus also. And moms and dads, before you're too miffed at me for asking your children to do this in the children's sermon, I do want you to know that there's been lots of Christian education studies that show that children grow in their faith when they do mission with their parents. So on December the 6th, if you can help, you will be helping the Salvation Army, and you will be growing closer to Jesus, and you will also be helping Jesus. Isn't that a wonderful thing to think about? Will you join me, please, in prayer? Dear God, we thank you for Jesus who loved everyone. And we thank you that we can help people too. That when we help anyone in your name, we are helping you and loving you. In your name we pray. Amen. Bye-bye, girls and boys. And the kindergartners and first graders may meet the teachers in the back of the room with one of your parents. And I'll be out at the desk afterward to sign people up for the Salvation Army.
Once again, as you're able, please stand to your feet and worship with us.
Accepted.
remain standing for the reading of God's Word.
Deuteronomy 28, 12 through 14. The Lord will be open for you. The Lord will open for you his rich storehouse, the heavens to bless all your undertakings. You will borrow undertakings. You will lend to many nations, but you will not borrow. The Lord will make you the head and not the tail. You shall be only at the top and not the bottom. If you obey the commandments of the Lord your God, which I am commanding you today, by diligently observing them, and if you do not turn aside from any of the words that I am commanding you today, either to the right or the left, following other gods to serve them. The word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God.
You may be seated.
Wesley, thank you for reading Scripture today. It's always great to have our Scripture from a Wesleyan perspective read to us. So thank you, Wesley. So last Sunday, our first part of this series of Shiny Gods, we talked about shiny gods, Assyria, and apples. This week, in the second installment of our Shiny Gods series, we will talk about Assyria, shiny gods, and apples. But I promise it is a different sermon. I will not preach the same sermon twice. Today's reading from the book of Deuteronomy, the authorship of this book is attributed to Moses. So you're thinking maybe 1300 BC was about the time he's estimated to have been alive. Deuteronomy is said to be Moses' farewell address to the Hebrew people who are ending their time in Exodus and preparing to enter the Promised Land without Moses. That's why it's his farewell address. This book contains motivational speeches, a summary of their history, laws, commandments, and a discussion of some of these curses and blessings. We heard this morning from the section about curses and blessings. And this authorship that is attributed to Moses, well, it has a couple question marks because there are references and inferences to events that hadn't happened yet when Moses was alive. Deuteronomy, including these verses we heard today, have a remarkably similar sound and tone and message to King Esarhaddon's vassal treaty. He was the king of Syria around 680. Syria was a very, very large empire. So the dark green swath was back around 800 BC, and then the lighter green is in the 600s. So this is how big Assyria was in this time of King Esarhaddon. And he was preparing to transition out of rule, and so he wrote this farewell address to his people. And in this message he reminded his people about their covenant and their loyalty to their ruler, the king, because he hoped that this loyalty would continue under the next rule. So where the black arrow is in the middle of your screen is about where Samaria was, where we looked last week about Samaria being taken over and leveled. And just below that is where Judah is. That's where Jerusalem is. That's where the Promised Land is that Moses' people, the Hebrew people, were entering. And there was a large cultural impact from Assyria. So much like King Esarhaddon's vassal treaty, Deuteronomy Well, it has so many similar sounds that it's very likely that it was also written around that 7th century BC, because it also reminds people of their covenant and loyalty to their ruler, God. The Hebrews were also preparing for a leadership change because Moses wasn't going with them into the Promised Land, just like the Assyrians were in a leadership change. So the verses from this section about blessing and curses, they tell the reader that God will bless their work. So God will bring rains to your farmland. God will bless your work. There's nothing wrong with work. Earning money ethically is a fine thing. But in this section, God also warns against borrowing, against going into debt, against becoming the tail instead of the head. This section in Deuteronomy says that if you obey these commandments of God, God will bless you and make you prosperous. You can see how this could easily be spun into a name it and claim it prosperity gospel perspective, saying that a godly person will be blessed by God acting on their benefit and sending prosperity and wealth to them. So I don't interpret this scripture as saying that, well, if we work hard and we live a godly life, that God's going to secretly make extra deposits in our accounts at the bank. So perhaps a second understanding of these verses might help. These commands to work hard and be good stewards and not to go into debt are godly principles. And when followed, we can become more prosperous because we've wisely used our money instead of frivolously blowing it. You will have more financially by not blowing your money and going into debt. I think we can affirm that. When you don't waste it, that's how we become more financially prosperous. It's not because God is making these bank deposits, but because wiser choices are being made by us following God's direction. It's better to be the head instead of the tail. Going into debt is not, well, it's not really recommended here in Deuteronomy. The borrower is at the mercy of the lender. And perhaps it's not only appropriate for 7th century Hebrews to hear this, perhaps it's also useful for us to hear as well. Maybe it's a good message for us. The average age here at this church is remarkably young compared to the United Methodist Church throughout the nation. The average age in the nation is around 66 for the members of a Methodist church. Our average age is around 35 or 36. But what that means is that a major portion of our membership are part of Generation X. I am the youngest bookmark in that generation. And according to William Emmons and Brian Noeth of the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis, members of Generation X, those who were born between 1965 and 1980, were the most aggressive borrowers prior to the financial crisis, and their debt increases to date remain the largest in percentage terms of all age groups. So if our largest demographic is Generation X, and Generation X are the largest swath of people who are indebted, perhaps this message rings true for some of us. They've dubbed Generation X Generation Debt. You see, the average debt among baby boomers in 2012 was around $100,000. The average total debt of someone 66 and older is under $40,000. The average debt among Generation X is over $110,000. And the total debt among the Generation Y, millennial, younger generation, $34,000, the lowest debt to date. Perhaps that's because they came of age during this financial crisis. They saw these foreclosures happening for all of those baby boomers in Generation X that, well, they financed more house than they can afford and lost it. Generation X in 2012 had 42% more overall debt than all other generations. According to Dave Ramsey, the get-out-of-debt guru, the writer of Financial Peace University, he says that debt has been marketed to us in so many forms, so aggressively since 1960, that to even imagine living without it requires a complete paradigm shift. Debt is just something that was normal and expected for Generation X. It's just something we know. It seems that our great-grandparents came of age in the Great Depression, almost never borrowed. Our grandparents perhaps borrowed only for their home. Our parents borrowed for their home and their car, and that's about it. But their children borrowed for everything. It exponentially increased. We talked last week about how some things are passed down genetically or hereditarily, and sometimes they get bigger and worse as they go on, and you can see that in debt. If you are married or partnered, if you have a significant other, you might want to know this. The number one cause of arguments in romantic relationships are because of money. Another reason to maybe listen to what Deuteronomy is saying. That's the reason I've started recommending Dave Ramsey's Financial Peace University or something similar to every couple that comes to me during premarital counseling, for them to start off on the right foot. Enter into this relationship knowing how to talk about money and how to use it wisely. I wish somebody would have told me about Financial Peace University when I was getting married 10 years ago instead of learning about it over the past couple years. It's much easier to be out of debt by not going into debt as opposed to trying to get out of a hole, because the first thing we should do when we find ourselves in a hole is to stop digging. It's better to be the head than the tail, because the tail goes wherever the head is going. But so many of us are part of this generation debt, largely to keep up with the Joneses. We want to have all of those shiny gods that everyone else has, the big house, bigger than we need, new cars that have all of the options. That backup camera is awesome. And a big TV, so big that we can stand in the backyard and read the score inside the living room. A boat, a professional-grade kitchen with granite countertops and nice clothes like everyone else wears, a Coach or Louis Vuitton purse. You can tuck yours under the chair. If you brought one today, I'm sorry to call out the brand names. But if we look closer at most of these people we have tried to emulate that have all of these shiny gods, you'll see that many of them don't own any of it. They're making payments on every piece of what we proclaim and lift up. And so we often do it too. Our hard work is just a struggle to keep up with the finance payments. That's not living. We've become the tail instead of the head. Maybe it's time to perhaps start erasing the debt, because I believe that most of us want to be generous and work toward tithing in our giving to the church, but many of us in Generation Debt have created an unhealthy debt load that has drastically hurt our ability to give and the level in which we want to give. So we must first be good stewards, as it mentions in Deuteronomy here, because most of us work hard for our money. And there's nothing wrong with work and earning a living ethically. And God calls us to be good stewards with our money, meaning that we need to be smart with that money. Digging a deep hole in debt is not smart or good stewardship. Debt affects our ability to give. So if these apples represented our finances, there's 10 apples here. God says, use the first 9 on your living, and use the 10th on others. It seems pretty simple. It's not a complicated equation. Taking 1/10 in math is a fairly simple thing to do. We just have 10 apples, and 1 is to go to others' benefit instead of ours. But that's all already used up. We've already committed all of that. Oh, and the new iPhone 6 is out. Kind of looks like the symbol on the back of it, doesn't it? I don't want to talk with my mouth full, but it's odd that this symbol oddly looks like original sin's symbol and becomes much of my own, our own. Oh, the Super Bowl's coming up. My measly 40-inch TV is not big enough to see the game. 65 inches in 3D would be much better. That's a good apple. But you know, it's better to feel the game than just to watch it. So I need a surround sound with an extra big subwoofer. My car's got a few more miles than I like. I've had it for a couple years. I'm almost even on the payments of it. There's a new one out with, I think it'll be a lot better for me. But it needs to have leather and navigation and a backup camera. And there's not enough room in the other 9 apples to make the credit card payment on all the shiny gods that I've previously bought. There's another bite. But then I've spent so much that I missed one of those payments on the credit card, so now the interest rate is up to what, 25, 30%? Another bite. And the house payment is bigger than that can cover, so that's going to have to come out of this. Swimming pool. I've been promising the kids a swimming pool. They got a really good finance deal. We might as well start that. Half of my neighbors have a boat in their garage. I need a boat in my garage. Not to take out to the lake, just it's in the garage. Right? Oh, you know what? Christmas is coming. That's going to be a couple of bites because I'm going to have to get out presents that I look like I can afford. So that'll be a couple of bites. A couple more payments on that. And you can see how just a couple of decisions makes it so easy to put our wants ahead of God, one nibble at a time from God's apple. Convinced by our culture that these shiny gods, that we're addicted to this materialism, well, we feel that the 9 apples aren't enough, so we often nibble away at the 10th, and sometimes even the 10th isn't enough. We spend more each year than we even make. So this is the 10th apple. This is what we put on the altar for God. Feels a little different when you set it up there. It helps clarify why these understandings and these lessons offered in Deuteronomy might matter a little bit, might have some impact, might benefit us in how we make decisions. Because I believe we all want to be generous people, but often it's the hole that we've already dug that keep us from being able to do that. So it's my hope and prayer that we can all be good stewards, be generous givers, because I believe most of us want to be. But we can't start there. We must first do the hard work, and second, not be up to our eyes in debt. That way, the 10th apple is available to give. We need to be the head, not the tail. Amen. So the Arises are going to come up and share a little bit about who they are and, well, what generosity means and looks like for them. I think Robert and Julie are taller than Wesley, so I'm going to raise this up for you guys. There you go. How's that?
Okay, my name is Julia Riza, and I'm just going to share real quickly, so hold on to your seats. And just listening to your message this morning, how it relates to what I have to share, it's amazing. So I ran away from home when I was 17. My mom and dad didn't know where I was for 6 months. I contacted them at December and said, I'm alive and well. They wanted to see me. I took a Greyhound bus from Los Angeles to Bakersfield. My dad had a huge party for me, invited all my family. They were so thrilled to see me. So I can relate to the prodigal son when he came home. I had an older sister that became very jealous. It's like, I've been here, I didn't go anywhere, and you've never thrown me a party like that. So I can relate to that. Then I reconnected with my mom and dad. Robert had asked me to marry him several times, and because of situations, it's like, no. And then I became with child, and he goes, now we have to get married. It's like, no, I don't believe we have to get married because I'm pregnant. I want to get married because we love each other. So it wasn't for another year and 4 months. Then he just came home to his mom's one day and said, we're getting married. It's like, well, okay. So we got married, and a short time after that, we had everything money could buy. We were living in the fast track. We had the boat. We had the trailer. We had a beautiful home, interior decorated, a pool and a jacuzzi, just to name a few. But I was miserable. I was just miserable. And Robert said, I think you need to see a psychiatrist because any other woman in your shoes would be happy with the things that I have provided for you. I can't believe you're not happy. And so we moved, and I thought, well, I'll move, it'd be great. And a short time after that, I just still had this feeling. At that time, my children were 6 and 2. Backtrack a little bit, 10 days after we were married, Robert lost his leg to bone cancer. It's like, whoa, okay. And I didn't know the Lord then. I just cried in bed every night. It's like, okay, I finally said yes after him asking me 5 times, and you're going to take him away from me. I just can't believe it. I don't know about you, God, but I'm pretty mad at you. And so we went on, and my children were 6 and 2, and I just had that need. So I went to church a couple of times, and then that's when I accepted the Lord as my Savior. Robert, a short time after that. Backtracking a little bit, trying to get it all in. 2 or 3 years after we got married, they called us in. He had a checkup. They called us in. They said, oh, my, you've got 5 masses on your lungs. It's inoperable. You might have 6 months to a year to live. We don't know. But we have this thing called chemotherapy. We think we can, buy you maybe 6 months to a year. So we went to UCLA. He did treatment for 13 months. They called us back in and said, oh, my gosh, 3 of those masses have disappeared. 2 have shrunk half their size. We think we can go in there and get some of that stuff out. So they removed 35% of his lungs. And then we started going to church. We were saved. And so from an early time, my children, we were in church Sunday morning, Sunday night, and Wednesday night. They never asked, are we going to church? We were just in church. We love the church. Fast forward, we moved to Little Rock 2 years ago. And just last month, we've celebrated our 40th wedding anniversary. and excited about that. And it's only because of God's grace, really, that we've stuck it out. And I said we got all the bad stuff over with early, so now we're just breezing through, loving the Lord. But we love Pulaski Heights in that it offers so many things for so many people. And we do participate in different things that we can, and also just providing our tithes and offerings. In James it tells us faith without works is dead, and it's like a bong, a cymbal just clanging. So I encourage you, if you're not plugged in somewhere, to get plugged in. There's so many, if you're not sure, ask somebody. They can direct you. And the fact that we've moved here and we've downsized it is so freeing. Talk about freeing, because it gives you more time. It gives, you can financially give more because you don't have the big house, the boat, all those things. So that's where I am today.
My name is Robert Arise, and I told Jill, I'll pick up the difference, whatever you miss. She didn't miss much, except the few things I want to say. I think one of the points I want to make is that when I had a sarcoma of a nerve, and back in the 70s, there was no such thing as X-ray and chemotherapy, no such thing. And so, by one vote, what I mean by that, I was a Marine. I served my country, and the medical doctors had control of what they were going to do to me. And by one vote, they didn't amputate my right hand. But I do remember very clearly, the doctor said, "Someone's watching over you, son." I didn't know the Lord then. Didn't mean much when he said that. And of course, I got out on a medical discharge with all the benefits. 18 months later, as Julie said, and we were fighting cancer again. And you got to remember that osteogenic sarcoma to this day, and I have a wonderful oncologist that I go to. He's a converted Jew, Dr. Mendelsohn. And to this day, it's a death warrant. Osteosarcoma kills 99% of all people that come down with it. And so I believe with all my heart, like he does, that I'm a miracle, that the Lord still heals and saves. Again, when Julie said that, chemotherapy was just a word. I was one of 26 at UCLA as a guinea pig that went for treatment. No guarantees, as she said. Out of 26, I'm the only one that survived. And again, the doctor said, "The Lord's looking over you, son." Didn't mean anything to me then. But as Julie said, in our lives, we got married, she found the Lord, and she shared her Lord with me. So when I think of faith journey, the Lord has blessed me with a faith partner, a wonderful wife, a wonderful mother, a wonderful grandmother. But she took the time to share her Lord with me. Oh, he's changed my life. And it's exciting for those of you that are young in here. It's an exciting, it's at moments you may be fearful, you may be afraid. But when the Lord, however he communicates with you, talks to you, puts it in your heart, he prepares you. And one of the things that I fear, that when he asks me or my wife or our family to do something, that if we don't do it, the thought that, well, if we'd have done that, who would we have reached for the Lord? What seed didn't we plant this time that he could use? So I think about that often, that when the Lord asks you, he equips you. He goes before you. And everybody here knows what tithing is, but we all have to deal with that in our own way. But when Julie and I prayed about it and got on our knees and said, the Lord will get 10% of everything I bring into my home first. And if I get to Jake's comment, when I'm asked by a young couple, what do? I say, give the first 10% to the Lord no matter what. First 10%. The government gets their percentage right off the top. So why shouldn't the Lord take 20% and put back for the rainy day and live on 70%? Believe me, the Lord will bless you. He has blessed us in so many ways, and not just monetarily, with time, family, enjoyment. No, there are difficult times, hard times. I heard a sermon once, and the pastor said, I challenge you to outgive the Lord in all and anything you do. We've been trying ever since, and we haven't done it yet. But He's blessed us. And I'd like to share, as we close, Pulaski is a wonderful church. My daughter was married here. My grandsons are being brought up in this church. Believe me, I love being in the sanctuary. I was raised Catholic. Everything by the numbers, everything by the book. But my grandchildren are in New Heights, and so we're here trying to set an example. And I'm thankful for that. That's why we give with all our heart. Pulaski is doing so much to try and reach all and anyone they can. Remember, when the Lord asks you to do something you don't, think about who didn't we reach for the Lord that by saying no. And if I can, I'm going to share 3 scriptures because I don't want to take any more time, but I want to share 3 scriptures with you that I reference and mean the world to me, that have changed my life again and again. That's Psalms 18:1. I love you, O Lord, my strength. The Lord is my rock, my fortress and my deliverer. My God is my rock, in whom I take refuge. He is my shield and the horn of my salvation, my stronghold. I call to the Lord, who is worthy of praise, and I'm saved from my enemies. And the second thing scripture I'd like to share is Colossians 3:23. Whatever you do, work at it with all your heart, as working for the Lord, not for men, in all that we do. And then one that just means the world to me, that I think about as often as I can, that as for me and my household, we will serve the Lord. Thank you.
Robert and Julie, thank you for speaking. We can't deny that they spoke from the heart, from their deepest point in their soul, to share who they are and why they are part of this congregation. So as our ushers prepare to take up our tithes and our offerings, remind you, if you give by electronic funds transfer and you don't want to just pass the plate empty, feel free to grab the yellow card out of the chair pocket and put it in. Place your Connect cards in there, as well as your tithes and your offerings. Would you please pray with me? Gracious God, free us through your Spirit to be generous, to be the head and not the tail, to be mindful of being good stewards and not digging a hole so deep that we cannot be generous. Guide us to be able to do that in your name, that we might change lives in our world through our giving. In Jesus' name, amen.
The more I find you.
Will you please join me in the prayer of confession? My friends, it is written, all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. Let us make our confession before God and one another. For the occasions when we measure success by the number of times we get our own way, Lord, have mercy on me, a sinner. Please say with me, Lord, have mercy. For the times when we measure happiness by the number and price of our possessions, Christ, have mercy on me, a sinner. Christ, have mercy. For the days when we measure our faith by the number of people who speak well of us, Lord, have mercy on me, a sinner. Lord, have mercy. Holy God, we thank you for our Savior, Christ Jesus, who uncovers our foolishness, exposes our self-deceits, and offers us an overflowing cup of saving grace. Loosen the knots of anxiety, the shackles of pride, which hold us back from receiving your grace with open hearts and minds. Enable us to take up your salvation and live with the delight of those who are forgiven and set free. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
There is a great song coming up, but there's also an hour barrier for Sunday school coming up. So please stand for the benediction. And if you feel like staying for the song, feel free to stay. But those of you who are Sunday school teachers, I don't want to keep you. If this is your first time visiting with us, thank you for joining us in worship. Please see the usher on your way out. We have a gift for you, a welcome present of thanking you for joining us in worship, and we hope you join us again. If you would like to learn more about being a member here, you're invited to attend a Membership Matters. We have one coming up on Tuesday the 11th at 6 o'clock for those who Sunday at noon doesn't work. Feel free to come. We have childcare. We offer food. If you want to come on a Sunday, we have November 16th at noon. Childcare and food are provided. Join us there. Bring your questions and receive this benediction. May you be filled with the Holy Spirit to follow God's example, to share Christ through the world. In the name of Jesus, amen.
justice and